Hey everybody, welcome back. A few weeks ago, we wrapped our project, The Collaboration Connection. I wanted to talk about two questions in particular that I excluded from our question set. I think that these questions serve as a particularly useful demonstration of more principles and practices that I found have been essential in a long-term practice of gratitude. So the two questions that I excluded were involved with memory. And they were to recount your most terrible memory and your most treasured memory. For many people, that could be traumatic. And in recounting a trauma, one can begin to relive that trauma. And this is not a safe environment for that to happen. And secondly, there is the concept of vicarious trauma, which involves being traumatized by the hearing of a traumatic event. Now, of course, there is a reason why telling our worst stories is a part of building intimacy. And as a teenager and young adult, before I understood much about the dynamics of interpersonal intimacy, I do recall thinking that when a boy was telling me his worst stories, we were falling in love. The reason that these stories are so powerful is because we become vulnerable. And in that process, if telling our story, we feel safe with the other person, if we feel like we are on the receiving end of compassion from the other person, if we feel that we can trust the other person to hold that story, and if we feel that we are somehow accepted despite what happened to us, then that creates a much deeper level of intimacy between two people. Now, let's say, for argument's sake, that our most terrible memories did involve a trauma. There are some schools of thought that believe that it is absolutely necessary to talk about one's trauma. And by talking about it, we can reframe the story and make meaning out of it. And there's also a school of thought that believes that it is not healthy, depending on the circumstances and the person, to continue to recount a story. That actually taking action and moving beyond the situation in which the trauma occurred is the healthiest thing for the person. So because it's so individual, I didn't want us to be talking about trauma. These concepts were phrased differently by Viktor Frankl in his writings on Holocaust survivors, and he called this action and creation. What does this have to do with gratitude? And it's simple. If we are going to live a long-term practice of gratitude, we need to find ways to cope with the difficult times, with the trauma, so that we can find gratitude, we can find joy, we can find oneness, and we can be of service in the world, even when life is at its worst. Now, if you're watching in the future, right now in 2020, the entire world is facing a global pandemic. We're facing economic distress, and we're in some countries facing civil unrest. It is a difficult time in the world. And so if we're going to find a way to be grateful in this time, I want to offer you what came to me around the mark of 1,000 days of gratitude: purposeful action and creating meaning. Now, on the other side, you would think it would be easy to think about our most treasured memory. But there is research that says we actually dwell more and remember the worst times much more than we remember the happy times. And there are some possibilities as to why that may be. Perhaps we ruminate on those difficult times more than we do our happy moments. But I also think that for many of us, we have chosen alternate lifestyles, and we don't have the typical milestones that many of our contemporaries would have. For instance, graduations and marriage and the birth of a child. And when these moments that are milestones happen in the lives of an adult, there is a sense of awareness of the moment. If you don't have those markers, then an entire life can go by where you are not aware of any particular moment. Because I don't have the milestones of a marriage or the birth of a child to make me present in the moment and mark that memory as a happy one, For me, what has been important is to be present, and that takes conscious work. So, one of the additional practices that came about around day 2000 was the practice of mindfulness. The reason that mindfulness is a practice is that in our culture in the West, we are often not mindful. Often we are caught up in our thoughts and we are going through our day thinking about the next thing we need to do. Where are we at on our to-do list? What's our schedule? What are we going to have for dinner? And we're not actually physically present in the moment. So it's not like we're going to be able to flip a switch and go from being caught up in our thoughts to being mindful and present all of the time. Mindfulness is more likely to begin with a very conscious effort to check in with oneself on a regular basis throughout the day. We can check in with ourselves and say, what is going on in my physical body? What is going on in my surroundings? What is the temperature of the room? What can I smell? What can I see? What can I hear? How am I feeling emotionally? What thoughts am I having? That momentary awareness can extend into longer and longer periods of awareness. Being aware in the moment helps to be able to notice those things for which we can be grateful, those things that bring us joy. Like the moment I experienced in the Ngoro crater in Africa. There I was in the Ngoro crater, watching a lion chasing a gazelle and seeing these gorgeous giraffes in the distance. And I just stopped for a moment. And I was in awe of that moment. I thought, I can't believe I'm actually here. And I was really there. I could feel the warm air on my face. I could smell the grass. I could hear the animals nearby. And in that moment, I became so fully present, I was able to be incredibly grateful and profoundly happy to be there. And so that is one of my most treasured memories. There's a little tidbit around our worst memories and our most treasured memories that I want to share with you. And that is that we can somaticize both of them, which means we hold our most terrible memories in the cellular being of our body. And that can create all kinds of problems with our physical and emotional health. We can also hold our most treasured memories, our happiest times in our body as well. And I learned this technique of anchoring our happiest times when I was studying to become a Polarity practitioner. I'll only speak to you from the point of view of being a client. And I had a practitioner once take me back to a wonderful moment in my life when I was driving down the Pacific Coast Highway and the sea was dead calm. So I pulled my car over and I walked out into the ocean and I sang to what I would consider my God. And it was a joyous moment, a moment filled with such happiness and calm and peace that my practitioner took me back and had me using neuro-linguistic techniques and energetic techniques, had me recreate all of my physical sensations, my thoughts and my emotions of the moment. And then we named that moment and we anchored it in my body. And it sits right here. Whenever I feel angry or I feel sad or I feel scared, I have that moment sitting right here, and all I need to do is touch or say the name of the story and I'm back to it. So in these difficult times, I hope that this will help you to make use of purposeful action, creating meaning, and being mindful so that you can find gratitude even in the most difficult moments, and to find those moments of joy and to store them as treasured memories. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more videos on gratitude and the various components of a long-term gratitude practice, then click subscribe. If you hit the bell icon, you'll be notified when I upload again. For what are you most grateful today?